James, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Appreciate being on here.
100%. Our mutual friend, Mr. Mikey Lucas, shout out to Mikey, made the intro, spoke very highly of you. Our conversation up until this point has been fantastic. So don't let me down here, bro. I'm looking forward to this interview. Don't let me down.
No, man, not at all. This is gonna be the
Jokes
best, the
aside,
best podcast you've ever had.
I love it. I love it. So, dude, give us the spark notes. For people who don't know you and your story, give us the spark notes. Who you are, where are you coming from, what are you doing now?
Yeah, right on. So, my name's James Schlosser, 35 years old, based out of Northern Virginia. Kind of had a very interesting childhood up until high school. And then my second year of college, my dad passed. We had no money, and I just had to start working, and so bounced around for a couple of years. Ended out at a program in Colorado called Training Ground, which is a program for young men looking to be initiated into manhood. And it's a 3-month program built around work, wilderness, and worship. And so it was a Christian program, and it was one of the most challenging programs that I think I've been a part of, but also one of the most fulfilling. And that sort of is where I think my life started. My life started 2009, the summer of 2009 in Colorado. So from there, came back to Virginia, bounced around a little bit, and then I started working for my brother-in-law in a wood shop building furniture. And so he had an interesting sort of business where instead of just building, buying wood from retailers and sawmills, he went out to old dilapidated barns that weren't being used anymore and that were in danger of being burned or taken down because of insurance, like property insurance and that kind of stuff. And he would go in, basically talk to the owners and just say, hey, I would really like to have the lumber that's your barn is made out of. I'll take it down at no cost, but the only payment is I want the lumber. And they were like, saves me having to bring the fire department out. And so we would take that lumber, bring it back to his shop, and then we would build custom furniture out of it. So I did that for 6 years. And then we bounced around a little bit more and then ended up in the door-to-door industry about 2 years after I stopped working in the wood shop.
How'd you get into door-to-door?
So I got into door-to-door. So I out here in Northern Virginia, they're just hanging out with, a bunch of friends and that kind of stuff. They were all getting into roofing and public adjusting and that sort of thing. And so the crew that I was sort of hanging out with was all starting to go towards that just because there's a lot of money in it. And I was at a point in my life where it's like, I really never made much money in my life at all. I think the most I'd made up until I was 28 years old was $30,000 a year. So not a whole lot. And
Yeah.
I worked hard. I mean, it was like physically demanding labor.
Yeah.
Pretty much my entire life. And I got into, I got into ladder assist, which is basically, inspecting roofs for hail and wind for insurance companies. So I worked as a third party vendor for that for a year and really did it just because I was getting married. And my wife and I wanted to have kids right away. And for me, I live by this value of like, look, if my wife gets pregnant, it's up to me to bring in the income. She's like, it takes obviously, pregnancy and birth and all that take a huge toll on a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be the guy to just be like, hey, look, I'm going to provide 100%. I'll provide everything. And so I got into the ladder assist, did that for a year. And then eventually just again, through mutual contacts, got into, started working for a roofing company back in 2018.
Got it. So you started the ladder assist, that's on behalf of the insurance company?
Yeah. So basically there's a lot of insurance companies that will, get calls because, shingles have blown off their roof, but they have company policies where like they can't climb a 2-story or they can't climb any roof over like a 612 pitch. So they have to hire somebody to do it for them and take pictures. And there was an entire company that built an app that basically went in and just did a full scale inspection that auto-generated a report for the adjuster. And so they just needed people to climb roofs and take pictures and measurements and look for hail and wind. And
Sweet.
yeah, so I did that for about a year.
Very cool. And I'd imagine, well, let me not speak out of turn, but I would imagine there's a whole lot more money being on the roofing sales side of it. So is that the reason you transitioned?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. And that was, you said 2018?
Yeah, so I transitioned to the roofing industry in the fall of 2018. So we're
Knocking
going on,
doors.
yep, knocking doors right out the gate.
How did those first couple years go?
Yeah, so that's just really interesting. So when I started, it was I mean, to me, it was a really big risk because I was working for this ladder assist company and I was just getting paid per job, and I would get the jobs every day. I got a couple jobs. I'm making, 200-300 bucks a day most days. Sometimes it was a lot more than that. But I was on the road a lot. I wasn't home like I wanted to be. I was working, 50, 60 hours a week a lot. And we were about to have our first child. And I just thought to myself, like, I don't want to be driving 2 hours away while my wife is at home with a newborn. And I want to be able to be in charge of my time, plan my schedule, because we would get routes like the night before. And so I had no idea where I had to be at what time until the night before. And that just really, really started to wear on me and on my wife. And so when I got into door knocking, it was 100% commission. So you basically get commissions on the roofs that you sell. And it was terrifying. I mean, I remember telling myself that when I transitioned, I was just like, man, I got to cover my salary and the salary that my wife was making,
Yeah.
which, was sizable. I knew I could do it in the roofing industry, but I just remember telling myself, like, I don't know if I have what it takes to do this or not. It's a big question,
Hmm.
but I'm going to give myself 6 weeks. I have enough saved up for if I give myself 6 weeks knocking doors. And if in 6 weeks I'm not seeing some sort of return on this investment of my time, then I'll go back to the ladder assist company. And I had people at the ladder assist company who are literally like, "Oh, you'll be back. You're not going to do that well, blah, blah, blah." And I'm just like, okay, you know what? I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. But I think I'm going to give it everything that I have.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, man, like I was knocking 7, 8, 9 hours a day. I was like, 'cause I had to make it work. It's like, it's either this or my family starves. And the beautiful thing is that, and I appreciated my time in that wood shop so much then because I knew how to work hard. I knew how to work when I didn't want to. I
Yeah.
knew what it looked like to get up and just get after it day in and day out. And most of the time I didn't want to, but I did it because I had to.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I mean 6 weeks passed and I saw some return. I was getting jobs and I was just like, I bought myself another 6 weeks. And then after that, the rest was kind of history. The really interesting thing and was that, that first year I had made more money than I'd ever made before.
Hmm.
I had made my salary from the ladder assist company plus my wife's plus a little extra. I mean, I did really well. And it just got to the point where it's just like, we're starting out as a family, we're hustling, it's like I needed to get a new truck. We wanted
Yeah.
to buy a house. And so there is this big pride of just like, yeah, James Schlosser is gonna do all this stuff and he's gonna provide for his family and he's gonna have the money. And then I did that. I bought a, really nice, I bought a pretty decent truck. I'm really happy with it.
Yeah.
We bought a nice house and a nice HOA. We got all the material stuff. And then I just remember thinking just like, man, like life's pretty good right now. I got the savings built up, have everything I wanted. And everything was just sort of look at what I have. And I just started asking myself like, man, I have other options. I don't really know what else I want to do, but I know I want to do something else. And I just sort of got into this complacency mindset where I knew the job well enough. I could go out and work 10 hours a week, but it's like, great. What are you doing with the rest of your time? And a lot of it was just like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to do with my life. And I just sort of didn't really do much of anything. And that just started to bring on just, yeah, a lot of complacency. And I wouldn't really say depression, but just more feeling sorry for myself of just
Yeah.
like, like, woe is James. I have all this money and all this time and don't know what to do with it. And then yeah, that kind of went on for a good year, I think. And everything was really great. And then I think
What
my
year is
going
this?
so this is 2020.
Okay.
So in 2020 is like COVID was happening. Obviously, we were still working. We were watching everything kind of happen, with the whole world shutting down. but with the door-to-door industry, like we were talking before we started the podcast, like door-to-door took off, man.
Yeah, it did.
Me and the guys were just rocking out. We were making it happen. And I remember, again, just being like, I don't know what I want to do. I just was in this crisis.
Yeah.
And then we found out that, like, okay, we got some mold. Like, okay, it's just, we had the one guy, just come out and be like, hey, yeah, we got to remediate the mold. It'll be like whatever, $2,000 or whatever. I'm like, okay, whatever. Go ahead, take care of it. Done. And then we noticed a spot upstairs in the bathroom. And so we dug into that. That turned out to be black mold. And it got to the point where we found out we had black mold the same day that we found out that we were pregnant. And my wife was quickly learning that she was mold sensitive. And so everything's like starting to get real. The whole foundation is starting to get shaky. Long story short, we had to move out of the house for 3 months. Literally drained our savings. We had to pay for a lot of stuff. We had to remodel 2 bathrooms. One of them had to be done twice. We had to remodel our kitchen. I mean, we just like sinking money left and right to the point where, 2021 was just an unbelievably difficult and harsh year. And all this stuff of just like everything's really great. Now everything's like horrible. Like it was, like literally living in my mom's house for 3 months, and she's got a really small house, and it was cramped. It was tight. And I'm just sitting here just like, it was less about what do I want to do and more like, how do I just freaking survive? Like it was so difficult. And I just remember talking to the pastor at my church, and God bless that priest. He really, really helped me out big time. And just encouraging me to continue to go and continue to move forward and take one step at a time. At this point, I'm dealing with major depression, and I'm dealing with, and my wife is just dealing with the trauma of what was happening. And then all this trauma from like, the past just starts to reveal its ugly head, because it's really nice when, just to sort of take that trauma and just sort of put it under the rug when things are good, but it's funny how life happens where eventually your life's going to go through some sort of hardship. And that's usually when all the bad shit that you put under the rug kind of pops up again. And so that's kind of what I was dealing with in that year. And again, it was my worst year in sales, but it was the year right before I hit my golden door. And so really, really, really suffered. And I just remember thinking to myself, why was I sitting on my ass for like over a year? Woe is me, making all this money, life's so easy, like just feeling sorry for myself. And then all of a sudden it's like, had this massive trial that we barely got through. So,
wow. Well, good for you for enduring until. It's always interesting to me how, like, I believe that life has a funny way of working for us when we pay attention, although while we're in the thick of it, it doesn't always feel like it that way. And it's always interesting to me how, like, we have to learn a lesson to level up. And until we learn that lesson, life will force us to learn the lesson, whether that is dealing with past trauma or whatever it might be.
It's so interesting that you say that, because we can learn a lesson, because I know the exact lesson that you're talking about. We can learn that one of two ways. One is the lesson can come to us, and the lesson is the suffering, right? And the second way is that we can go to the suffering. So I just finished Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, which is a very inspiring story of this guy who literally, had a horribly traumatic childhood, but then he wanted to see really what he was capable of. And learning about the Navy SEALs is just, I really enjoy studying just the SEALs and their training, because they are running towards that suffering. But you're right, you have to learn a lesson to level up. But if you know that, and if you can think that far ahead, then you can go into the suffering or into that next stage or into that change with that understanding, and totally harness that leveling up,
100%. So What was it that finally shifted for you? Because you come out of your worst sales year ever while you're in this deep depression and everything is
Yeah.
seemingly going wrong and
Mhm.
life like draining your savings. And then you come out and crush it. Like, for those who don't understand, Golden Door is like the 1% of the 1% of the industry. So
Mhm.
what was, for people listening, what was the metric for roofing that year that you hit Golden Door?
Yeah. So in order to hit Golden Door for roofing, you had to hit 2.5 million in revenue. And I was one of six guys on that stage, and I hit almost 3.1 in sales.
Insane. Insane for anyone that knows roofing sales and like say deal size, and like that's a really solid number, testament by the fact that there's only six of you guys. So what would do you know what the moment was where you were just like, nope, I'm done, like we're pivoting and I'm going to just become an even more savage version of myself and throw down my biggest year ever? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a number of different things. I think it eventually got to the point where like we did make it back into the house and we were able to, take down all of our 6 mil plastic, which kind of blocks all those mold mycotoxins. Because I mean, there's a while where we were only living in like 70% of our house, and the kitchen and living room were all blocked off. So we did that for a while, even going into 2022, which is the Golden Door year. Um, but I just remember wanting somebody to come in and kind of save the day, or just for money to kind of show up. Like I didn't want to just go
Yeah.
out there and restart myself. Like I wanted the easy path forward. I wanted the path where I didn't have to go out there and just do it. But I remember just thinking to myself, I mean, it got so bad that I eventually had to, I couldn't pay rent in January of 2022, and I just remember thinking to myself, like, James, nobody's going to get you out of this shithole. Like, it's
Yeah.
all up to you. Put on your damn bootstraps, go out there and start hustling like crazy. Like, go do it. And I just remember literally talking to a buddy of mine, and just he had a scooter, and I said, "Hey man, can I borrow your scooter?" Like, it's January in Virginia, I'm knocking in 20-degree weather, and I want to save time and just get more reps in, go knocking doors. So he let me have the scooter. I'm out there. And a couple of times, like I'm just going so quickly, I don't even have gloves. So it's like I can't feel my hands because like they're so cold. I am
Yeah.
frigid,
With the
but
wind chill.
I got the inspections, I got the signs, I got the jobs, like it started to happen. And then we had a really good incentive from the company, a really good sales incentive where they're like, if you hit this top number of like 2.15, then you're going to get like, it was just, I mean, it was a really good number that they were going to give us.
Yeah.
And I just remember being like, I was like all about it. I'm like, this is great. I love it. I already know what I want, blah, blah, blah. And so I just started to go. And as I just start going, I start seeing the numbers come back, and I started seeing the money start to come in. And I'm just like, I'm going to hit this number. I'm going to hit this number. And I really, really wanted it. And so is basically every day I got up and I was just focused, like, I got to hit this number. And I did the math too. It's just like, if I did this number, here's what I have to do every single month. And if I have to do that every single month, here's what I have to do every single week. And if this is what I have to do every week, here's what I just got to do every single day. And if I hit it, great. If I go over, great. Um, and for the most part, I just got up and I was just laser focused. I mean, basically savagely focused on that number. I
Yeah.
really wanted to hit it, and nothing was stopping me in the way. And I saw complacency. Like I saw those moments where you look at the bank account and you're good, and you're just like, oh, I guess I'll stop working. I'm like way better than I need to be, and just thinking to myself, no, do
Yeah.
better, because like that thought, that little thought grew into an action, grew into a habit, the habit of complacency. And
Mhm.
that's where like everything went south. Even
Yeah.
before the mold happened, it started really with my heart, and I was just growing complacent. And had I not been complacent, I probably would have handled the entire mold situation way better. But I was taking everything
Mhm.
for granted. And so in this whole process, I'm also just realizing, like, look at what I actually do have. Like, I can go out and work.
Yeah.
Like, I have a beautiful wife. I've got, a beautiful child, and now two. And I just started to be grateful.
Mm,
And that just changes so much when you can just wake up every day, and not just with the work and not just with the job, but just with the life, you
yeah.
know, like, I'm waking up next to my wife every morning. Like there's so many guys that, have wrecked their marriages. And yet I'm able to, I'm here by the grace of God. I'm successful and I'm still happily married, you
Yeah.
know, and, I eventually hit the number. I think like by September, it was crazy. By September, I hit 2.5. And then in the same mode, I was just like, okay, I could stop here. I'm good. Can level off. I was like, no, just make it the best year yet. Just go as far as you can. I crossed over 3 million on my anniversary on December 2nd. I signed a job, hit 3 million on my anniversary. So it was very fitting.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Dude, that's so cool. Um, yeah, I'm not surprised to hear the basically the realization being like, dude, like no one's coming to save you. I literally put this on my Instagram story the other day, and
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, people do not fucking get it.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't. They think that the coach is going to save them. They think the mastermind or the blueprint or the manager or the new pay plan or the new company, because the grass is always greener. They think something else is going to save them. And it's not. It never will. Not if we don't solve the problems that are behind the scenes that led to us need to be saving in the first place, or need
Mm.
to be saved in the first place. Right. Like
Oh
those things
yeah.
will help, but like we have to put in the work. I remember going to like networking events back in my like early days of like adult entrepreneurship, right? Where I was living in New York City. I was still working a 9 to 5, writing code for a living. And then I was just like trying to build a network marketing business, and then trying to build an e-commerce business, and then trying to
Mm-hmm.
build a code, like just trying to do things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was during the time where I was in the network marketing space, which I sucked at, by the way. I did just
Mm-hmm.
good enough to like get to go on the trips for free, like made no money though, but built cool relationships. And I remember so many people saying like, just don't get sucked into the if it is to be, it's up to me type of thing. And I get why they were saying it, because like a lot of people will use that to like just defer all responsibility to you and like try and build dependency on the organization because it's recurring, right? Like I get it. But
Yeah.
I remember thinking like, dude, no, but it is like it is up to me, you
Yeah.
know, it always is. So I'm not surprised to hear that that was the thing, and what a crazy transition you made. Absolutely
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love everything that you're saying at the end of the day. I mean, and this is the thing about that was the thing about scared me most about COVID, was how much everybody was all about this like free government money.
Yeah,
And I get it. You're struggling and you need a helping hand. Like I get that. But the mentality behind that is just so dangerous, because it's like,
yeah,
oh, if I just have this money, everything will be better. And this is what I love about what Jocko Willink is doing. His entire thing, he runs this consulting business called Echelon Front, and he's going to different businesses and companies and doing keynotes. And what I love about him is that everything comes back down to responsibility.
yeah.
Everything comes down to like, you want something to change, you change it.
Yep.
But we're
The
so afraid to
ownership.
move, like we're so afraid to move because we don't want to fail.
Yep.
Like we don't want to take that risk of just like, oh, but it might not work. It's like, you're right, but if you never try, it never will work, and you're going to continue to be unhappy. you
Yeah.
know um but failure does not have to be a negative thing at all. You can completely and totally harness your failure and use that towards you. I used my failure to understand what complacency actually did to me. I could have stayed in the rut of just like, you know oh, maybe somebody will bail you out, maybe you'll win the lottery or something like that. Not that I was playing
Yeah.
the lottery, but just the idea of it.
Yeah.
um and I could have stayed in that mode, but instead I was just like, or I could just go out and crush it and really work. I know how to knock doors. I know how to get jobs. I know how to do all these things. I'm just not doing it. Now I had like a purpose to do it. And then, yeah, I mean, I really, it just soared to new heights.
Yeah.
Um, but what's also interesting, and this is a good lesson in suffering, is that I needed to be broken. That suffering was so key for me because I needed that. Just almost if God was just like slapping me over the head, being like, you thought that blessing was all that I had for you.
Yeah.
Like you go out there in roofing in your first 2 years, making all this money, and you're like, oh, wow, I'm so blessed. This is great. And you thought that's all it was. Like I had so much more for you, but you weren't going out doing anything with what I was giving you.
Mhm.
Like blessing looks like work.
Yeah.
He's like, as you work, he'll bless you, and as you take that and give it back to him, he's just going to, he's going to bless you more. That's what I found just day in and day out.
That's so good. That's so good. And I think, I mean, I see it in our business every single day. Like everyone comes to us because they want to make more money. And then we ask them, well, why aren't you making more money? And the answer is always like they want consistency in their business. That's the one thing they're struggling with. And I look at it and I'm like, okay, well, why are they inconsistent? And part of it, is it's usually one of two things, but either they're in the part of that lesson that you just talked about where it's like they knew all the things, but they're not doing it, right? The barrier to entry is just so high.
Right.
The rejection hits and a couple extra doors get slammed in their face. They call the day short, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever it is. They pull up to Hood and then they get that one email. They think they're going to lose their deal. And then all of a sudden they're 37 cat videos deep and they've lost 3 hours of primetime knocking.
Yeah.
Or the complacency comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So either they're lacking the consistency of the output or the complacency comes in because a couple of those checks hit. They're like, holy shit, dude, I'm rich.
Yeah.
And then they're like, I don't need to knock today.
Yeah.
And both of those lead to the lack of the consistency in the income, right? And you
Yeah.
need to just fight both of them on a daily basis.
You do, but I like what I'm doing, and a lot of where my thought process is now is it's not so much like, oh, I'm rich, I don't have to knock, but it's more like, what am I going to do with my time? So a big thing that I was able to do during the door knocking thing was like I had pretty strict boundaries about what I was going to do because I was still dealing with everything at home, and I was still like remodeling a bathroom and doing all of that. So I wasn't just spending like 60 hours a week working and look at this Hulk going out there getting everything. Like, no, I had very clear boundaries. Like I went out and did really well last year, but at the same time, I was home for dinner every single night because that's just one of the things. Like,
It's
look,
awesome.
here's my values, dude. And I'll tell everybody this. Number one, God. If I don't have him, I'm totally screwed, completely and totally screwed. So that's number one. Number two, family. Family comes second. It is money is really important, but family is simply more important at the end of the day. Like, what do I want to be remembered for? What do I want my kids to remember me as? Like, is dad just out there making a bunch of money and working? Like, is that how he's providing for us? Because at the end of the day, it's like, that's about 10% of the way we actually need to provide for our kids and for our wife. Like, it's actually a very small amount,
Yeah.
but our kids also need us. Like, they need present fathers. Like even I mean, I was exhausted yesterday. Like went to bed. I was dog tired, and my daughter wakes me up at 3:30 in the morning. Daddy, I'm scared of bad guys. And I could have done a couple different things here. I could have said, you'll be fine. There's no bad guys. Close the door, go back to bed, let her do whatever she's going to do, cry it out, blah blah. I could have done that. Or I could understand and empathize with the fact, okay, she's scared of bad guys. This is a legitimate fear. Nothing's going to happen, but she's afraid. And I understand she's afraid. So I just crawled into bed with her and I just said, hey, I got you. And just was there for 20. Did I want to be awake for 20 minutes doing that? No, I wanted to sleep, but she needed me to do that. And if I can get to her in those moments, if I can build that trust with her in those moments, then when she's in high school or in college and gets her heart broken, I want her to be built to have that relationship with me where she can come back to me. Brene Brown, who's a big researcher in vulnerability, talks about, she has this term called marble jar friends, where it's like, you're really good friends by all the little actions that you do. So if it's like this little action of just like, hey, I got you, hey, I like, that person was not being nice to you. I'm going to stick up for you. It's like, cool, there's a marble, put it in the marble jar. And then eventually fill it up with like 50, 100 marbles. That's your marble jar friend. So I took that same concept. I'm like, cool, how do I apply this to like my wife and my kids? It's like just little marble moments. And so for me, it's like if I would have been the guy that's just like, okay, you're afraid, but I'm not gonna enter into that with you or engage that illegitimate fear that you have because there's no bad guys or doors are locked, security system, all that kind of stuff. She doesn't know that, but I do. And in my mind, that's what I'm thinking. If I would have done that, it's like, how is she gonna know that I'm really gonna be there emotionally? But if I just sit there with her and for 20, hey, I got you, go into bed and just hug her, you know, like, well, that's an opportunity for a marble. Now, when she does get her heart broken, she's not going to something or somebody unhealthy. Like she's coming to me, and I think this idea of success is like so many men today look at success and they think, I just need to provide for my family, like financially, like give them the nice car and the nice house. Well, studies are showing that the people that live those lives are still getting a divorce. So it's not working. And I have a really big passion for telling guys, like, look, there's a lot more that you as a man have to offer and a lot more that you're responsible for, especially if you're married with kids. You're responsible for a lot. And you really need to engage those things. But here's a big reason why they don't, because when you go to work, like, and you're successful and you're a total Hulk and you're slaying it, and it's just like, okay, cool, like you're good at that. This comes down to the failure complex. Like you're good at that, so you're just going to lean into that. But then you come home and it's like, well, your underwear is still on the floor. You didn't pick it up and put it in the laundry hamper. Or like, why aren't you cleaning up after yourself? Like here's this really big successful sales guy and he's at home and he's not being responsible like he should be. So it's harder to enter into that, because at the end of the day, like, dude, you're married, like our wives know us and our faults better than anybody else. So that relationship is going to be harder, but at the same time, it's going to be so much more fulfilling. And I think that there's really a space where if we can go into work, and go slay it, but understand that your need at the home, both physically and emotionally and spiritually, is so big that if you go home and really enter into that space, it's actually going to give you fulfillment in the long term. Maybe not in the short term, because it's hard in the short term, like everything is hard. But if you continue to lean into that and perfect that and do that better and enter into it more and fight harder and pray better and trust in God better and surrender to him and work with your wife and engage in the arguments and listen when she has something critical to say to you, that in the long run, it is actually going to give you fulfillment. It is going to give you energy. And you're now going to be able to go into work knowing that, yes, I'm successful. Yes, I'm very blessed in this, but I'm actually doing this so that I can go home and do what actually really matters. And I think that there are so many hungry men out there that don't know that they need that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we were talking about this before we pressed record. That was so good, by the way. I hope people go back and listen to that again, because that's really what it's all about. And I mean, we could sit here and talk about how high performance is not just about building a stack of cash, because it's not. It's about building a well-oiled machine that's thriving on all cylinders. And the way that I always think about this is like, well, I'll say exactly what we were talking about before we pressed record. Like, dude, I feel like way too many people, they hide behind this mask that is, well, I'm working so hard for my family. But then they sacrifice their family for the working so hard, and they don't transition between the seasons well enough. And I don't think that many of them do it maliciously. I don't think that they do it as my dog is like literally like breaking down my background over here. You see this thing moving? That's funny. It's like sleeping on the floor. I don't think these people do this maliciously. I think they're just unaware and they need people like you and I to point that out and to help them build whatever the blueprint needs to look like for them.
Yeah.
Because I mean, dude, I just believe all of this is personal development. Like I look at the businesses that I
Yeah.
build and I'm like, cool, that's great. And they're providing for my family and I'm building, this life that I want, and this is amazing. But it's never really about the business. It's about who can I become while building the business, right? Because the
Yeah.
person I become will then build the next thing. And that's great. And that will continue to fill the financial need. But that person I become, like I'm becoming that person for the people I care about,
Yeah.
right?
But
It's all in pursuit
you
of the
actually
end.
have to do that. And a lot of
Yeah.
people will talk that talk. But I'm just going to say right here to all of the listeners, success doesn't look like being a top 1% guy.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. That's not success. That's success in work.
Yeah.
If you want whole success, that is a little sliver. And what I encourage men to do that have the desire to go out there and like, yeah, I want to totally crush it and work, take that energy and go invest it in your family and
Yeah.
perfect that, you know? Um, and I see it so much, and I'm sure you do too, Mike, where it's just all these high performers are just like, they have just shitty home lives, you know? Like it's
Far
just,
too often.
yeah. And it's not right. And I mean, the script has to change and these conversations need to happen more and more of just like, if you actually want success, real success at the end of the day, when you break it all down, it just looks like surrender. Like that's what success looks like to me. Where you do everything that you can do in all the areas of your life, and then understand that you're just not enough. You know, um, I mean, at the end of the day, it really just comes down to, like for me, it all boils down to the fact that I'm just loved by God, and I'm working as if it all depends on me, and then I'm just simply just surrendering and just trying to receive the love that I've already been given. I'm just trying to be in a place where I can accept it better. So,
It's interesting. I like that. Let me ask you this, and then we'll
yeah,
start to wrap up because I want to ask you. I want to be respectful of your time. I'm really curious. In this process, right, going through the mold thing, all the internal trials and tribulations, making the pivot, getting into this year that became your best year ever, right? And like the taking full ownership, extreme ownership, full responsibility, putting in the work. I'm curious, like, what lesson did you take that surprised you the most or was the most unexpected?
that I didn't have to totally kill myself at work in order to hit the numbers that I hit. That it actually took creating really good boundaries with my time outside of work
Yeah.
and investing in that a lot. And then using the energy that I get from that and bringing it into the workplace. And then taking the energy I get from the workplace and putting it into the home and creating that cycle. That was the lesson that I found.
So good. So good. Yeah. And I think it's because I think we often look at it as restrictive, right? Like, especially in this commission sales world, how can I build the boundary when like I'm doing this to make money? So like let people walk all over my calendar because it's an opportunity to make money.
Right.
Right. It's very short-term thinking. I think you hit the nail on the head with that. I think that's so awesome. Um, James, before I ask you the last question, where can people hang out, or where do you hang out most on social? Where can people follow along with what you're doing, what you're building? Plug away, my friend.
Yeah, awesome. So I am on Instagram, that.james.guy. And then if I'm also building a consulting business right now where I really want to come in. I want to help companies and I want to help business leaders engage with their sales team uh, to just help them experience life to the fullest. And I really want to help just high sales leaders build good boundaries in other areas of their life and understand the need to do that in order to just be happy. Because I think that there's a lot of unhappy sales guys out there that are really successful. they're successful and they have all the money and the cars and all this kind of stuff, but they're not happy and they're not fulfilled. And most of them are depressed and hiding it. And I have a real passion to help those guys out. And so for that, you can just hop on over to my website, jamesschlosser.com. And that's where you can find me. And then I'm on LinkedIn as well. So yeah.
Perfect. Guys, all that be linked up in the show notes. Get connected, show some love, all that type of stuff. James, last question I have for you. Going all the way back. Right. Losing your father second year of college, going through the program that you went through post college and kind of like graduating into manhood there and growing a ton there, coming back, working in the wood shop, eventually getting into the roofing space. I think you said line adjuster, whatever that terminology was, working with the insurance companies, then getting into the sales side of it, right? Making all this great money and experiencing the highs and then experiencing the lows, going through all the family stuff that you did with the mold and the home and all of this stuff. And then finally making that pivot and moving into 2022, having your best year ever, 3.1 million in revenue, absolutely crushing all the way to where you're at right now. This entire window. What's been the biggest lesson that you learned that has yielded the most results and had the biggest impact on your life and in your business?
Surrender. I think just realizing like, even like I have what it takes to do really great things, but the need to surrender, I think, again, for me, to God is number one, because I can do all the great things, but without surrender, it's like, I mean, it's just, it doesn't really mean anything to me. But I think that surrendering and understanding that I'm loved by God is just, that's the number one thing that just has consistently carried me through the lows, and something that I'm consistently trying to remind myself of in the highs.
Boom.
So yeah. And and it's not about me.
Love
so
it.
2 lessons. It's not about me.
James, thanks for joining me, brother. I really enjoyed
Thanks
this.
for having me.